Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here with you this afternoon to talk a bit about the work of my firm. My name is Chris Page, and I'm the Senior Vice President of a consulting firm that helps people develop their philanthropy. We work extensively with individuals and with foundations and with corporations. The firm is about 10 years old, and over that period of time, we've come to work more and more with corporations. I thought this afternoon we'd spend some time on this because I think it's an interesting growth area in the philanthropic field. And charitable giving often is one of those aspects of giving that really interests the general public, particularly when it comes from corporations with whom they do business and that they know very well. Our firm has been in the charitable advising business now for over a decade. And in that period of time, we've opened 4 offices across the US, and we average about 150 clients each year. Those 150 clients distribute somewhere on the order of $300 million on an annual basis with our assistance. And much of that money, while much of that money remains in the US, a significant amount of it goes overseas, often to 20 or 30 countries each year. As I said, a significant portion of our practice has grown into working with corporations. Corporations many times want to be perceived as good corporate citizens as well as successful businesses. One of the ways that we help them do that is to develop charitable giving strategies that both meet the company's goals and values, but also give them a presence in the community, one that people can identify with. For example, if I were to say Walmart, you might immediately think about education. Many communities have benefited from Walmart's education grants, and there are many other companies that you'll probably think of yourselves. But let me tell you a little bit about what we do with these companies. As a consulting firm, we do 3 primary things with our corporate clients. The first would be to help them do research, to understand better the emerging trends and issues in the communities where they may want to make grants. The second type of thing we do is to develop either strategies or programs for them. In these instances, we help take the research that we've conducted and turn it into an actual strategy that the company can then implement on the ground. So what does that translate to? That really means that we've looked at the data, we've looked at the needs in the communities that the company wishes to serve, and then decided how best to provide grant-making opportunities for the company. Where can they invest money in nonprofits, in schools, in other kinds of public activities that'll make a difference in those communities for people in need? The third kind of thing that we do in working with corporations is to actually help them implement strategies. We have the capacity, with our management expertise and our philanthropic expertise, to actually manage programs on behalf of these corporations. So a corporation may decide that they don't want to have the responsibility internally of taking on a grant-making program, developing a new community corporate social responsibility program. They may choose to do something entirely different in the way of outsourcing. And so our staff can actually do the outsourcing and distribute the grant funds on behalf of the corporations. Now, we do that both anonymously or with the corporation being known, depending on exactly how the directors and management of the corporation want to pursue their program. So let's back up and take another look at those 3 things. At the research, for example. Many times, particularly these days, corporations that we work with are multinationals. They can't begin to know what's going on the ground in all the countries where they deliver their products and services. So one of the reasons for engaging our firm is that we can use our network of experts around the world to help them better understand what the problems are in places as far away as Indonesia and Afghanistan, as well as at home in the US. These firms use our research networks to better understand how they can put charitable dollars in the hands of organizations and people where they'll do the most good. For example, we recently have done some research for technology companies. Increasingly, technology companies are trying to use their products in ways that will help the very poor, either get access to educational materials or find ways that they might use their technology to access financial systems. And so we've worked with a couple of technology companies to do just that, to deliver educational curriculum into schools where there is probably, in most cases, no electricity, and it's very difficult to get accurate current textbooks in languages that children may be speaking in very remote villages. So by using wireless technology, these schools can have very current materials and depend on satellites for the delivery of updates. And more technology companies are attempting to put these tools in the hands of teachers and students, particularly in poor areas in developing countries. Another way is to think about the fact that most poor people live in a cash society. They have no other way of maintaining their financial health than to barter for goods or to sell goods for cash that they then have to control within their household. Savings mechanisms don't exist for many of these people. So we've worked for a technology company trying to develop ways that people could use their cell phone, once again relying on that satellite technology as a way of managing their money. It's very much like the processes that we see in use now in the US, where people actually get to deposit their funds in some kind of banking mechanism in their village, but those funds can be transferred electronically to pay their bills, to send money to family, to pay for special events within the family. These ways of using the technology really help to advance the company's agenda and help it develop appropriate products, while at the same time reaching very poor people and solving some of their very basic needs. So the research piece is one that most companies that we work with find very useful, and many of them rely on us to work with their own research and development departments and with their senior managers around the world in their regional offices to develop this kind of data. The second thing that I spoke about was designing strategies and programs. Designing strategies and programs sometimes can be very difficult inside a corporate setting. Many corporations have so many demands on their time and on their resources and skills of their staff that they find it easier to take the data that's been developed, whether theirs or ours, and use us as an outside source to begin to develop strategies for that. For example, we've recently developed strategies for 2 pharmacological companies. In these instances, both companies were really concerned about serious health problems, particularly in the developing world. In the first instance, the company was worried about the dramatic rise in smoking among poor women in developing countries. This has a direct impact on the individual's and family's health in these areas. Smoking is considered in many developing countries to be a status symbol. If one can afford to smoke, it means that at last you're earning a good living and you're moving your family up the social ladder and the economic ladder. At the same time, when a woman begins to smoke in many of these countries, she begins to take dollars away from her family's health, because in so many developing countries, women are very significant wage earners and breadwinners for their families. Moreover, if a woman begins to develop health problems, it can leave a family stranded, totally destitute, without the care they need. So the rise of smoking in developing countries, where women are gaining so many other rights and privileges and opportunities, is a serious one. And pharmaceutical companies have been concerned about that rise. And so one company has now engaged us to develop a strategy that would help them place charitable dollars in the hands of nonprofit organizations that could educate women on the dangers of smoking and on the potential impact of their actions on the lives of themselves and their families. We've developed that program so that the company can use its regional administration system, its regional distribution system, to get these dollars into the hands of nonprofits that are known to individuals on the ground in these countries and can provide the kind of support that small nonprofits need to get into rural areas and poor urban areas to educate women and provide them with this information. Another company that we've worked with has been interested in advancing cardiovascular research. Along with smoking, cardiovascular problems are increasing around the world. As food production increases and the access to food becomes better, people tend to consume more and they change their eating habits. Many times we've heard stories about populations in developing countries that change their entire diet when more foods and stranger foods become available. Many of these foods are modified. Many of them contain higher levels of fats and other things that these populations simply haven't had to, process before through their body systems. And as a result of that, and as a result of increased smoking and other activities, we see a rise in cardiovascular problems. Now, with that rise, this particular pharmaceutical company felt that it was important to begin doing serious research into new methodologies that would be effective in poor and rural areas. And so the company is now funding fellowships at medical schools around the US and across the world that will help to develop new ways of both educating people about cardiovascular problems and solving them. Finally, I would come back to managing charitable programs. Many times companies feel that they have a desire to do charitable work, but that they don't have the capacity internally to carry it out. In those instances, our firm can actually manage the programs on behalf of the company. Sometimes we do this anonymously, sometimes we do it in the name of the company, depending on how the leadership of the firm really wants to be seen in the public eye. One prime example of this is a firm that is a multinational holding company based in the US that became really concerned about the economic and mental health issues arising along the Gulf Coast of the US. That area has been beaten time and again by hurricanes and floods, and more recently by a serious oil spill. The company decided that it wanted to remain anonymous, that it wanted to do good works and not take a lot of credit for it. They simply wanted to help. So they actually made a grant to our firm and allowed us to re-grant that money to community mental health organizations, organizations that were helping to develop skills among poor fishermen who'd lost most of their resources and were having a difficult time getting back on the water to earn a living. And most importantly, in my view, they also provided significant funds for mental health care, particularly for children whose parents had been stressed by the loss of their jobs and in many cases by the loss of their homes and all their belongings, to help them cope with that kind of post-traumatic stress that can affect so many children and effectively ruin their educational lives. So these kinds of activities are things that we're able to do with our very broad-based grant-making staff. I would say finally that we're focused on the kind of change and improvement that the companies that we work for want to see. And that probably is our biggest strength, is spending time with these corporate leaders to better understand what it is they want to achieve and how they want their company to be perceived. At the end of the day, all of our work with corporations, though, is about moving really good ideas into tangible actions that are going to create very real impact on the ground for people in need. Thank you so much for your attention. It's been a pleasure.